everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new, welcome. My name is Meg, and today we are doing a review in swatches and eye swatches of the new Anastasia Soft Glam eyeshadow palette. Alright, so I am so excited to have this eyeshadow palette. I just got it as a birthday gift from my husband, and he also got me this Marvelous Mauve Dose of Color palette that I've had my eyes on, so I'm really excited to use this. But I am super excited to have this eyeshadow palette. It's kind of all over the place with all of their eyeshadow palettes. I feel like it's like everything is super hyped up. This is my first time purchasing an eyeshadow product from this company. I've basically just stuck to brow products, so I'm excited to finally be branching out. It does come in a nice carton, and then on the back it gives you a small view of the palette and the colors that you get. So this is the component to the palette. It is nice, soft, and velvety, and then inside you have all of these colors, a decent size mirror, and there is a brush. My desk is like a disaster zone right now. Like, I can't for the life of me find it. I was just using it, but it's a double-ended brush that does come into the palette. What attracted me to this palette is the pink shadows in here and like the light softer golds. I'm like not a huge fan of like super red shadows, so that's why I never picked up the Modern Renaissance palette. I just didn't like the tones in it. But this is still pretty warm tone and like reddy orange tones, but I'm excited to go ahead and get into it and play with more of like the pinky and mauve-y tones. I am going to be doing tutorials with this. I'm going to be doing a 3 looks and 1 palette video, so that will be up after this review. Today we are just going to get some background information on the palette, and I'm going to show you eye swatches of how these apply, because the last 2 releases of Subculture and Prism had quite a bit of controversy with it not blending and being super powdery, so we will get into that in a minute. This palette does retail for $42, which in my mind, I always like to compare things to Urban Decay because that's like probably the brand that I have the most palettes of. It's not a bad price for the amount of shadows that you are getting. I think you get 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, you get 14 eyeshadows for $42, so I don't think that that's a bad bargain at all. It says the benefits of this palette is that it's fully pigmented and easy to blend formula. 14 shades including ultra matte, duochrome, and metallic finishes, luxe packaging with a large mirror and double-ended brush. So I will go ahead and get into the eye swatches. I prefer to do eye swatches than arm swatches because, I mean, it's nice to look at swatches on your arm, but it doesn't really say much about the formula of the shadows and how they're going to perform, and we buy eyeshadow palettes for our eyes and to blend out, not to wear on our arms, so that is why I like to try to do eye swatches. I'm going to be putting like, I think 3 shadows per eye just to get through this quickly, just to give you guys an idea of the pigmentation and how they blend out. And I'm curious about these shimmer shades because typically in palettes, shimmers will apply better with a finger than a brush, so I'm anxious to see how this is going to work. So let's jump into that footage. For my base, I use a concealer. Here I'm using my Tarte Shape Tape Concealer, and I just set it with a loose setting powder, or you can use a translucent powder. This is how I prime and set my eyes every time I apply shadow. Here is a close-up of this beautiful palette completely untouched. The first color is Tempera, and this is an ultra matte velvety beige. Because I'm so pale, it's kind of difficult to see this swatch, but if you look closely, you can see that it did lighten up underneath my brow bone. Glistening is an iridescent gold with a hint of a pink reflect. This shadow did perform better with a brush versus my finger. It was definitely less of an impact and not as opaque with my finger. Orange Soda is an ultra matte pastel peach, and this color is just so beautiful. Rose Pink is a rose gold with a soft pink iridescent hue. I love this color. I love rose gold. And this color performed about the same as it did applied with the brush and applied with my finger. I was really impressed with the payoff of this. And with this close-up, you can just see how pretty and iridescent and shimmery these shimmer shades are. Sultry is a hybrid satin metallic finish warm chocolate brown, and this color is intense. I love it. It definitely looks more on the pinky tone to me, but I think that that's just the satin metallic finish to it. It applied great with the brush. There was minimal fallout, and it also applied really well with my finger, but I was able to spread it out a lot easier with the brush. Bronze is a metallic gold bronze shadow, and again, it is super rich with pigment. I'm so impressed with these brush swatches, and as you can see, there's a little bit of fallout, not anything too crazy. And with the finger swatch, again, it applied, but I felt like it wasn't as opaque or as intense as when I applied it with the brush, so that was surprising for me. Mulberry is an ultra matte mulberry shade. And as you can see, it applied super intense, but these shadows do blend out nicely. You just have to work with them a little bit. And again, I was impressed with how this blended out for it being a quick little swatch. Dusty Rose is an ultra matte dusty lilac shadow. I live for this shadow. It is my favorite color in the entire palette. I didn't blend it out super well for this swatch because I was trying to fit 4 shadows on this eye, but it's just very soft and pretty. Fairy is a multi-dimensional light gold, and again, super intense on the brush. I have to give them credit for these shimmers. I can't even imagine them applied wet. They would probably look insane and sickening. So with the finger swatch, again, it's intense right where I first applied the product. However, spreading it out, it loses its intensity. So I still stand by saying that applying these with the brush is the best way to go about it. Burnt Orange is an ultra matte deep orange shadow. Again, with these mattes, they're super intense, especially with the brighter, more pigmented ones. They're more intense where you lay the color down, and you definitely have to take your time to work with these shadows to blend them out to have a really nice, flawless blend. If you're used to shadows being effortless, you definitely need to take more time with these shadows. You have to finesse them a little bit more, but once you do, the outcome is absolutely beautiful. It's just a little bit of a different formula than what I'm used to. So if you're new to Anastasia eyeshadow palettes, know to expect this. Sienna is an ultra matte earthy brown. It is such a beautiful color in this palette, and this one blended out really nice. Rustic is an ultra matte deep cinnamon brown. Another beautiful color in this palette. The formula is super velvety on these mattes. Cypress Umber is an ultra matte dark coffee shadow, and oh my gosh, this is like my favorite. No, Dusty Rose was my favorite. This is my second favorite matte shadow in this palette. It is such a beautiful brown. I think it's because it's not as warm tone as the other mattes, but as you can see, I accidentally flicked some onto the bridge of my nose. So especially with the darker colors, really make sure you're tapping away the extra and blending carefully. Since this is a swatch video, I was a little bit careless. Last up is Noir, which is an ultra matte deep carbon black. And I was so impressed with the pigment on this black shadow. And my overall note for this palette, as you guys could see with the last shade, Cypress Umber, it wasn't blending out as flawlessly or as easily as some of the other shadows because it is such a darker shadow. So when working with this color and this black color, I suggest you take a little at a time and slowly build your way up to make sure you do get that flawless blend. Again, this palette may not be the most beginner friendly for eyeshadow, but if you know these tips and know what to expect, I can think that you can easily create any or multiple beautiful looks with this palette if you know how to use it right. But I was really impressed with this black shadow. Okay, so I just finished swatching all of the colors in the palette, and I have to say I'm like really impressed with the formula. It is definitely softer shadow. As you guys can see, it's pretty powdery, and I just barely tapped my brush in, but I've heard that this is totally normal for Anastasia eyeshadow palettes. And I didn't really get a ton of fallout either. I would say just like using the darker shades, there was like maybe a teensy bit of fallout, but there really wasn't any, which is fantastic. And I'm really impressed with this black eyeshadow. I typically have like a higher standard for that because to me, Urban Decay's Blackout is like the best black eyeshadow out there. So this is like really pigmented and it was pretty easy to move around. I know it looks a little bit patchy on my eye, like eye swatches aren't necessarily the best because I'm not going to dedicate one shadow to an entire eye, if that makes sense. But I think you guys were able to get an idea of just how easy these shadows are to work with. And you can just kind of see like how nicely they did blend out. So that is all of the shadows swatched. So hopefully it gave you guys somewhat of an idea if it is worth purchasing in your mind. They're not the greatest eye swatches on the planet. I know I, could have done one shadow per eye, but I wanted to move around quickly because it really does put a lot of strain on your eye to have to wipe it off and reapply over and over. So I'm really pleasantly surprised. I went into this having like no opinion, no expectations, and I'm really happy with how the palette performed. I'm excited to get in with this and play with it and see how it actually performs for different makeup looks. And yeah, I'm really impressed that the pigment on the shimmer shades is like almost better with a brush than applying your finger. So that was like a really pleasant surprise. Most brands can't pull that off. So props to this brand for doing that. I think this is going to wrap it up for this review. Like I said, I will be doing 3 looks, 1 palette featuring this. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that video. I think that this is well worth the money. I will not be returning it and I can see myself using this often and reaching for it often. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this brand, what you guys think of this palette. Would you pick it up? What would you like to try? I would love to hear from you guys. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye guys.